Banwa, souls longing for inner peace and mental clarity. I am Naomi, and from this corner where silence is my most precious companion and simplicity my most faithful teacher, I warmly and serenely welcome you to Minimalist Charm. Today I want to invite you on a very special journey, a journey not to an exotic destination but to a space that has been for centuries a beacon of wisdom and tranquility amid the storms of the world, a Zen monastery. But don't worry, we won't need to pack our bags or take vows. Together, we will explore some of the Zen monks' best-kept secrets for cultivating a clear mind and a light heart, and discover how we can apply these timeless practices to our busy urban lives, transforming our daily routines into an oasis of calm and purpose. A few years ago, I had the privilege of spending some time in retreat at a small monastery nestled in the mountains of Kyoto. Life there was almost austere in its simplicity, yet at the same time, it had a richness and depth that moved me to my core. I remember the sound of the bell at dawn, calling us to meditation, the way the monks performed every task, from sweeping the wooden corridors to preparing meals, with a mindfulness and reverence that turned the mundane into the sacred. The eloquent silence of the meditation hall, where the only instruction was, just sit. The austere beauty of the rock gardens, which invited contemplation and an encounter with fertile emptiness. There were no luxuries, no distractions, no rush. And yet in that minimalist environment and serene discipline, I found a freedom and peace that I had rarely experienced in the hustle and bustle of the city. Many of us in our urban lives feel constantly bombarded by stimuli, overwhelmed by demands, and with our minds scattered in 1,000 directions. We long for calm, clarity, the feeling of a light heart and a peaceful spirit, but we often feel trapped in a whirlwind of activity and noise that seems impossible to stop. We wonder if it is possible to find that monastic serenity without giving up our lives, our jobs, our families. And the answer, I firmly believe, is yes. Japanese minimalism, at its core, shares many of the philosophical roots of Zen, and teaches us that peace does not depend on external circumstances, but on our inner state and the practices we cultivate. Today, I want to share with you some of those practices, some of those monastic secrets, adapted so that we can integrate them into our daily lives, and thus transform our urban life into a space of greater clarity, lightness, and purpose. One of the first and most fundamental practices we can adopt from Zen monastic life is the cultivation of mindfulness in each moment, transforming our daily activities into opportunities for meditation and action. In a monastery, every task, no matter how humble, washing bowls, working in the garden, copying sutras, is performed with total concentration and absolute presence. It is not about doing things quickly in order to move on to the next thing, but about being completely immersed in the here and now of what is being done. This practice, known in Japanese as shikantaza, when applied to sitting meditation, just sitting, can be extended to all our activities. By bringing our full attention to everyday tasks, we not only perform them more efficiently and with fewer mistakes, but we also calm the incessant chatter of our minds and find deep satisfaction in the simple act of being present. I think of Carlos, a young executive in Madrid who lived in a state of constant stress, his mind always worried about the future or ruminating on the past. Even in his rest moments, such as drinking coffee or walking the dog, his mind was still racing. He felt exhausted and disconnected. I suggested that he try applying mindfulness to a very simple activity that he did every day, such as brushing his teeth. Instead of doing it mechanically while thinking about his to-do list, he should focus completely on the sensation of the toothbrush, the taste of the toothpaste, the movement of his hand. At first it seemed trivial, but as he practiced, he began to notice that those few minutes of mindfulness had a surprisingly calming effect on his mind. Gradually, she extended this practice to other activities: eating, walking, listening. "It's like I've discovered a switch to turn off the noise in my head, Naomi," she told me. "I still have my worries, but now I have moments of real peace and presence throughout the day. And the funny thing is, by being more present, I'm more productive and make fewer mistakes." I invite you to choose an everyday activity and practice mindfulness while doing it. Observe the sensations, the sounds, the smells, without judging. simply being present. This practice of mindfulness is beautifully complemented by the radical simplification of our physical environment, creating spaces that reflect the calm and order we wish to cultivate in our minds. Zen monasteries are known for their minimalist aesthetic, where every object has a purpose and a place, and where empty space, or ma, reigns supreme, inviting serenity and contemplation. A cluttered and crowded environment creates a sense of chaos and mental overload, while a clean, tidy space with a few well-chosen objects promotes clarity, focus, and inner peace. It is not about living in an ascetic void, but about surrounding ourselves only with what is essential, useful, or brings us deep joy, as taught by the wisdom of Marie Kondo, which has deep roots in this philosophy. I met Ana, a university professor in Mexico City, whose apartment, although full of books and memories, had become so cluttered that it caused her constant stress. She had trouble finding things, felt overwhelmed by the mess, and couldn't relax in her own home. I suggested she embark on a process of conscious decluttering inspired by the simplicity of Zen spaces. I encouraged her to go through her belongings one by one, thanking each item for its service and letting go with love of anything she no longer needed or that no longer brought her joy. It was a long and sometimes emotional process, but as her apartment became clearer, Anna began to feel a lightness and mental clarity she hadn't experienced in years. "My home has become my sanctuary, Naomi," she shared with me. "Now I love being here. The outer order has brought an inner order that I didn't know I needed so much, and the most surprising thing is that by having less, I feel like I have more space, more time, more peace." I encourage you to look at your own home with the eyes of a Zen monk. What could you simplify? What objects could you let go of to create more space for calm and clarity? Remember, your environment is a reflection of your inner state, and it can also powerfully influence it. Another invaluable secret of monastic life is the establishment of a clear and consistent daily routine that provides structure, discipline, and a harmonious rhythm to our days. In a Zen monastery, life is governed by a precise schedule that marks the times for meditation, work, meals, and rest. Far from being a prison, this routine becomes a support that frees the mind from indecision and distraction, allowing energy to focus on what is essential. In our often chaotic and unpredictable urban lives, establishing a personal routine, even if it is flexible, can give us a sense of anchorage, control, and purpose. I think of Daniel, a freelance designer in Buenos Aires whose work schedule was erratic and disorganized. He often worked late into the night, skipped meals, and felt constantly exhausted and aimless. I suggested that he try to establish a basic daily routine, inspired by the structure of monastic life, but adapted to his needs. He set regular times for waking up and going to bed, for meals, for focused work, and for rest. He included small rituals at the beginning and end of the day, such as a few minutes of meditation or inspirational reading. At first, he found it difficult to adapt, accustomed as he was to the freedom of his disorder. But he soon discovered the benefits. He felt more energetic, more focused, and curiously, more free. "Routine has saved me, Naomi," he told me. I thought it was boring, but it has given me a structure that allows me to be much more creative and productive, and above all, I feel much more balanced and at peace. You don't need a rigid, inflexible routine. Start by establishing a few anchor points in your day: a regular wake-up time, a small morning ritual, a moment to plan your tasks. You'll see how that structure brings you a surprising sense of calm and control. Life in a Zen monastery also teaches us the profound wisdom of doing manual labor with awareness and gratitude, recognizing the value of samyu, or communal work, as a form of moving meditation and selfless service. In Zen, there is no hierarchical distinction between intellectual or spiritual work and manual or mundane work. All tasks, from cleaning the floor to cooking or working in the garden, are seen as opportunities to practice mindfulness, cultivate humility, and contribute to the well-being of the community. This attitude transforms work, often perceived as a burden, into a source of satisfaction and connection. Isadora, an executive in Lima, Peru, with a very demanding and prestigious job, felt increasingly disconnected from her body and the simple things in life. Her work was purely intellectual, and she had lost touch with the pleasure of working with her hands. I suggested that she find a manual activity that appealed to her, no matter how simple, and do it with the Samu attitude, with mindfulness, without rushing, enjoying the process. She decided to start tending a small urban garden on her balcony. At first, it seemed like just another chore, but as her hands came into contact with the soil, as she saw her little plants grow, as she harvested her own cherry tomatoes, she began to experience a joy and satisfaction that she did not find in her professional achievements. "It's incredible, Naomi," she told me. "Getting my hands in the soil, taking care of these little plants, connects me to something very essential, very real. I feel more grounded, more alive, and the taste of my own tomatoes is incomparable. You don't need to become a monk farmer, but perhaps you could find pleasure in cooking more calmly, repairing something around the house, knitting, painting a wall." Mindful manual labor takes us out of our heads and back into our bodies, into the present, and connects us to a primal satisfaction. Of course, no journey into a Zen monastery would be complete without talking about the central practice of sitting meditation, or zazen, as a direct path to calming the mind, observing our thoughts without identifying with them, and connecting with our true nature, that space of silence and peace that resides within us. Zazen is the heart of Zen practice. It is not about not thinking or reaching a state of ecstasy, but simply sitting in a stable and dignified posture and observing the coming and going of thoughts, emotions, and sensations without clinging to them or rejecting them, as if they were clouds passing through the sky of our consciousness. This practice, done regularly, even if only for a few minutes a day, can have a profoundly transformative effect on our ability to manage stress, anxiety, and negativity, and to cultivate a clearer, more equanimous, and compassionate mind. I met Julian, a journalist from Santiago, Chile, who lived with a hyperactive mind, full of worries and self-criticism. He suffered from insomnia and a constant feeling of inner agitation. He was skeptical about meditation, thinking it was too spiritual, or not for him. I encouraged him to try just 5 minutes of zazen a day, simply sitting in silence and focusing on his breathing. I explained that it wasn't about stopping his thoughts, but about learning not to be carried away by them. With a lot of initial resistance, he began to practice. The first few weeks were difficult. His mind seemed noisier than ever, but he persevered. And then one day, he experienced a brief moment of true inner stillness, a glimpse of that blue sky behind the clouds of his thoughts. That moment was a revelation. "Naomi, for the first time in a long time, I felt a space of peace within me," he told me, moved. "It's not that my problems have disappeared, but now I know there's a place inside me I can return to, a refuge, and that changes everything." Meditation is not a magic solution, but a gradual training of the mind. But its fruits, greater calm, clarity, and compassion, are invaluable for navigating urban life with a lighter heart. Finally, Zen wisdom reminds us of the importance of connecting with nature, even in the middle of the city, as an inexhaustible source of inspiration, healing, and perspective. Zen monasteries are often located in beautiful natural settings, and their gardens are considered works of art that invite contemplation and harmony. Even if we live in a concrete and asphalt metropolis, we can always find ways to connect with the natural world. A nearby park, a tree on our street, some potted plants on our balcony, or even simply contemplating the sky and clouds. This connection reminds us that we are part of something much bigger, helps us put our problems into perspective, and nourishes us with the vital energy of the earth. Valeria, a young art student in Bogota, Colombia, often felt disconnected and overwhelmed by the frenetic pace of the city. I suggested that she try to spend at least half an hour each day in contact with nature, however modest that contact might be. She began taking mindful walks in her neighborhood park, paying attention to the trees, the birds, the feeling of the sun on her skin. She brought some plants into her small apartment. She started drawing the flowers and leaves she found. "It's like I've opened a window in my life, Naomi," she told me. "Nature calms me, inspires me, reminds me of the beauty and resilience of life. Now, even in the midst of the chaos of the city, I feel like I have an anchor, a source of peace I can always turn to. Find your own oases of nature in the city. A simple walk in a park, sitting under a tree, caring for a plant. These can be powerful reminders of our essential connection to the natural world and an endless source of serenity. My dear friends, the Zen monk's secrets to a clear mind and a light heart are not esoteric practices reserved for a select few in remote monasteries. They are timeless, universal tools, deeply human, that we can integrate into our urban lives to cultivate greater inner peace, mental clarity, and a deeper sense of purpose. By practicing mindfulness in our daily activities, simplifying our environment, establishing routines that give us structure, performing manual work with awareness, dedicating time to meditation, and connecting with nature, we are, in essence, transforming our own lives into a dojo of peace. It is not about becoming monks, but about learning from their ancient wisdom to live our lives, with all their complexities and challenges, with greater presence, serenity, and joy. We discover that peace is not a distant destination, but an inner state that we can cultivate here and now, in the midst of our cities, at the heart of our lives. And in doing so, we not only improve our own well-being, but also radiate that calm and clarity to those around us, contributing in our own way to creating a slightly more conscious and compassionate world. As a beautiful Zen proverb that my grandmother Akiko used to quote while serenely watching the flow of a stream says, "Mizu no nagare ni mi omakasu," which roughly translates as, "Trust your being to the flow of water." May we learn to flow with life, with a mind as clear as mountain spring water and a heart as light as a leaf carried by the breeze, finding our peace not in resistance, but in wise acceptance and serene presence. I sincerely hope that this little journey into Zen wisdom has offered you inspiration and practical tools to cultivate a clearer mind and a lighter heart in your own lives. If these ideas have sparked a light within you, I invite you with great joy to join our community here at Encanto Minimalista. Subscribe to the channel to continue exploring these paths of peace, clarity, and purpose together. And if this message has brought you a moment of calm, a new perspective, or an impulse for change, please give us a like. Your support helps us immensely to bring these seeds of serenity to more souls who may be longing for an inner refuge. Now, as always, I would love to read your thoughts and experiences. Comment below on what Zen-inspired practice you feel you could begin to integrate into your urban life to cultivate more peace and clarity, or share a personal experience where you have found serenity amid the hustle and bustle. Write "My Life, My Peace Dojo" if you feel inspired to embrace this path of transforming your everyday life into a space of calm and purpose. Thank you so much for your presence, your attention, and your courageous pursuit of a more mindful and peaceful life. May you find peace in simplicity, clarity in stillness, and lightness in your heart. Matane.